right now, President Trump says that he wants to de-escalate the tensions in Minnesota after weeks of protests over the ICE crackdown. So 2 major shootings involving agents have been a big topic of conversation on the internet and across national news. And our Greg Groogan sat down with the former Houston police chief about this ongoing situation.
Chief Art Acevedo, great to see you.
Great to be here.
Thanks for coming in and being willing to discuss a very serious subject in our country right now. What we're seeing with ICE in Minneapolis. You've written about it. You have talked about it. What's going wrong there?
Well, a lot's going wrong. I think, first of all, policy in terms of the law is a political issue that should be handled by politicians. But when it comes to tactics, what we're seeing is, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, are tactics that either by design or incompetence are leading to the unnecessary death of American citizens, not immigrants, American citizens, uses of force in terms of going hands-on and knocking people to the ground, and I'm talking about old ladies, young people, that, quite honestly, if it's shock and awe that they're looking for, the only thing that's accomplished is to shock the conscience of the American people. And so on an issue that the president ran on that arguably probably got him elected, they've turned to political because of these tactics that appear to be meant to instill fear instead of trust in the American people and in immigrants. I think it's become a political liability, not to mention the fact that it's putting the public at risk, and it's putting not just ICE agents, not just Border Patrol, but police officers at risk because it's tearing down trust.
You talk about trust versus fear,
yeah,
and how that erodes the ability of officers to do their job.
Yeah, well, it's a fact. I mean, there's been a study that shows that trust has that clearance rates can be impacted by up to 30% when trust is lost. And quite honestly, when they see a badge, and we've argued on this matter for quite a few years. I was a police chief in Texas and around the country in 4 different cities for a total of about 15 and a half years, right? Which is a long time. So I think I know what I'm talking about. We were always arguing against, we don't want, ICE is not the police. They should not put police on their garb because we don't want the public to confuse ICE agents and these DHS Border Patrol operations with local police. We've worked really hard, especially since the George Floyd, and to de-escalate, to do all these things to build trust. And when people are confused and they see police, they're not going to be able to tell where one badge, one jurisdiction starts and one ends. To the extent that I saw a police chief the other day in somewhere on the East Coast actually do a social media video with his video showing their attack vehicles and explaining to the public, here's our markings, here's what we wear. Our officers are not going to take on 5-year-old kids and day laborers and people working at a local taqueria. When you see this, these are your police officers, and what they're working on is going after the worst of the worst violent offenders in our community.
Let's compare and contrast.
Yeah.
An extraordinary performance here in Houston post George Floyd killing. This was his hometown. Thousands and thousands of protesters. Feelings were high. You were committed to de-escalation instead of escalation. Can you talk about that and how that was different than what we were seeing in Minneapolis?
Well, look, I think first and foremost, it's about the collective heart of the police department and it's the collective heart of the community. I think that Houstonians have a great, and I'm talking about from the worst gangbanger felon to the preacher. I mean, there's a lot of pride in the city of Houston, and so to me, our job as leaders and as police officers is to not fan the flames, but to operate in a manner where we, tamp them down. And so, in the case of George Floyd, you didn't see me walking around like Bovino. I hate to bring up a name, But I mean, you didn't see me walking around with a platoon of heavily armed police officers. Matter of fact, if you recall, on the night that we had 60,000 in downtown, I kind of disappeared for about 4 or 5 hours by myself at night, surrounded by a lot of angry people, because what I wanted them to direct their anger at me instead of at my cops, and I wanted the officers, if they saw me somewhere out there, that, hey, if it's safe for the chief to be out here alone, it's not a war zone, it's not us against them, and we're going to be all right, which I think when you look at how Houston did, from a community perspective and from a law enforcement perspective, we were second to none. And we didn't coddle people. There was a distinct line. When it was crossed, we still arrested about 800 people that summer.
You and Tom Homan know each other well?
I've known Tom for a long time. He's a professional. That's been his career. And I think that having the president move him in to take over the operation is a huge plus for the country.
If Tom called you today and said, Art, what's the next step? How do I de-escalate this thing and still get the job done, get the mission done?
I said, Tom, think back to your career when the deporter-in-chief was deporting millions, and I'm talking about Obama. What tactics were you using? I mean, millions. See, because it's not a matter, nobody's questioning the importance, at least I'm not, and I know most law enforcement, most community members are not, the importance of a secure border and enforcing immigration laws. The methods, the tactics, the attitude all matter, right? Because you need to go back to that, one. And two, we push back really hard because in the world of limited resources, we didn't want the day laborers, the nannies, the gardeners. We didn't want to create all this fear and all the unintended consequences. Forget the economy, but the social consequences of the breadwinner who, but for their immigration status, is a law-abiding, productive member of society. We were seeing a lot of unintended consequences socially. And they created the priority enforcement program for not secure communities, which was what was going on with the record numbers. Priority enforcement, where they focus those resources on the bad actors, on the people that it's not about their immigration, even though it is, it's about the way they're going around hurting Americans, hurting members of the immigrant community, and committing violent offenses or repeat offenses as it relates to misdemeanors. And they did it. And so that's why we didn't have that then. And I think that Tom understands that Border Patrol belongs on the border, not going around trying to do crowd control. That's not what they're about. And they need to get back to the border, and people need to be better trained.